Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Coffee Talk. I'm Peter McCartney, the climate campaigner at the Wilderness Committee, and today we're going to go on a tour of the future and talk about our movement for Postcarbon communities, a new campaign that we've recently launched. Before we get started, I'm very excited to share this with you. If you're excited too, make sure to hit that like, hit that love, speak up in the comments, tell us where you're tuning in from. Anything helps, and consider yourself engaged. So are you ready to take off here? So let me set the stage for you. It's 2050. And although climate change is still a problem, we have managed to limit global warming to safe levels. And we did that by eliminating carbon pollution in our communities. As you can see behind me, we replaced highways with greenways. We worked with local indigenous nations to create and restore ecosystems that mean that you can actually access wild food, just outside your front door. These greenways and parks have become places for people that are healing our cities instead of the urban highways that divided them over the past half century. Suburban and rural communities have become sort of a network of close-knit eco-villages. These homes produce all of the energy they need and actually all of the food they need as well for the inhabitants inside, or close to it anyway. You're able to eat mostly what's coming out of your backyard and neighboring communities. We gave our streets back to people. Basically, we got rid of all street parking. Public transit runs down every major artery, and there's now meeting spaces for people in our streets. They're vibrant. Restaurants and shops are thriving there, and we have a bike network that expands across the communities, so that really we all live in walkable communities where everything is within a short walk or roll. And then if you need to go into another neighborhood, you have public transit or cycling to get you there. Nobody needs to own a car. We built green public housing that is oriented to transit, so that low-income people in our communities don't even need to have a utility bill, don't have to pay to get to work, and are able to enjoy all of the sustainable options that others are able to enjoy as well. And we grow food just about everywhere. The rooftops of our grocery stores, our balconies, and our backyards. Everywhere we can, we grow food that's not polluting. It doesn't have any nitrogen fertilizer or very little associated with it. And it doesn't have to travel from far off places to be able to get to our tables. So that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know if it sounds good to you. That's my vision for our post-carbon communities, and I know you have one too. The truth is, this is going to look different in every community across Canada, but everyone will have to make this transition over the next several decades in order to limit global warming to safe levels. And the good news is that we're building, happier, healthier, hardier communities in the process. So whether you're in Toronto or Red Deer or Wakefield, all of these communities will have to make that transition. And the way that we got there in 2050 is by local activists pushing for change, bringing the climate action into their own context, and making sure that their community is leading the way, and some friendly competition between communities across the country to see who can get there first. And that brings me to our Postcarbon Communities campaign that we've just recently launched. It's a national campaign, but at a local level. And you sign up through our petition for Postcarbon Communities. We really took a look at this over the last few years. We've done a lot of work to try and sort of vision what this actually looks like to solve climate change on the ground outside your front door. So often climate policy is pretty inaccessible for the average person, and we talk about the need to limit or to cut emissions in half over the next 10 years. But I don't know what that really, or the average person doesn't know what that really looks like. So how are we able to chart where we're going and get there without actually being able to see it? And so we're, while the targets that we've set are important and we have to keep them because governments need to be held to account, we're really looking at, by 2050, what the scientists say is we have to have eliminated carbon pollution. Doesn't mean we have to eliminate CO2, but pollution is any extra in the atmosphere. And so, we're really, that's the place we have to get to. That's what scientists have set out for us. And we have to take that into our own local context to see what this looks like. So let's take stock. Where are we at now? In Canada, the largest contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions, carbon pollution, is the oil and gas industry. And the climate movement, climate justice movement, has been fighting fossil fuel export projects for ages. And the truth is, there's no oil and gas industry in 2050. We cannot continue to burn fossil fuels for carbon pollution. So that one, I feel like most people pretty much got covered. They can see that, even if they don't agree with it. But coming right in at 24% of our emissions compared to 26% for oil and gas is the transportation sector. And all the cars we drive, all the planes we fly in, and the ships that we use to get around and bring in goods from all over the world, those all burn fossil fuels as well. And the good news is that we know how to tackle these emissions. And the truth, might not be what you think, because a lot of people think that electric vehicles are sort of the be all end all. If we only took everyone's car and shifted it from being an internal combustion engine to electric, that would solve all our problems. But we actually don't just need electric vehicles, but we need fewer vehicles, and a lot fewer. And we need to have most people, rural, extremely rural communities and sort of trades workers who need their vehicle aside. Most people need to be able to get around, move freely throughout their communities and between communities without a car. Buildings and electricity, I group these two together because really the electricity that we're producing and the emissions from that are to power mostly our buildings. Those account for about 23% of our emissions. So there's another quarter. And that is all taking place directly in our communities. And it's something we can also fix. The biggest action that we can do to reduce emissions in our buildings is to power them with renewable energy. And at the same time, increase their efficiency so that we need less and less. While the electric grid in Canada is pretty green at this point, we, for better or worse, have sort of a legacy of hydro dams that are not continuing to produce pollution. But we still use gas to heat our water and our homes. And so, one of the biggest things we can do is get fossil fuels out of our buildings and really use renewable power for everything, while also building to a higher standard and using materials that aren't as polluting as cement and steel, with a whole bunch of caveats that we can talk about later. And the last sector is, agriculture and waste. And I kind of group these two together because really it's food. People don't realize, but agriculture has a huge impact on the climate. All that mostly from nitrogen fertilizer, which puts nitrogen nitrogen dioxide into the atmosphere, and is really a significant greenhouse gas. But it's not just, the actual farming of our food, it's the machinery involved, it's the transportation to bring it to us. We don't need tomatoes that came from Chile if we can grow tomatoes, right outside our front door. And so, we're never going to produce all of the food we need directly in our community. Some it's obviously easier than others, but the more that we can produce, the less pollution that will be created when we are looking at what we eat. And so that's, sort of the main categories that we're working on in our post-carbon communities transition is food, buildings, and transportation. But all of these have to be done through a lens of justice. And, we need to talk not just about a transition to a post-carbon community, but about a just transition. And what that means is that this is an opportunity to make sure nobody gets left behind. And that by transitioning off of carbon pollution, we are able to actually correct some of the historic inequalities that exist and continue to exist to this day. So what that looks like is, our green buildings shouldn't just be for, wealthy people who are homeowners. We need social and non-market housing to be built for green buildings. Our transportation, we don't need to get to a world where the streets are clogged with Teslas instead of, the polluting cars we have now. We can make public transit free and make cycling a viable option that's way more affordable. And in food, it's making sure that everyone has healthy, food to be able to eat. Community gardens can produce for local food banks, and then we're getting food from our community. It doesn't have any pollution, and it didn't need to come from Mississauga for your Tim Hortons donuts to be floated. And so, those are some of the things we can take to make this transition the most just we can. So how does the post-carbon communities movement actually work? So we start out with the post-carbon communities petition. And this will go to any elected officials in your community specifically. It'll be used by activists to illustrate the support for this transition, and it will be help activists that are already, it's written in a way that will help activists that are already working for climate action in your community. And when you sign on to this petition, you'll get invited to join the movement for post-carbon communities. And every 2 weeks, if you continue on the path, it doesn't just automatically do it, but they'll send you a new action tool where you can contact your local leaders, grow the movement, get more petition signatures, and write letters to your local paper to really demonstrate support. And then once you've gotten through the online tools, the last sort of step in the process is to organize a meeting. You could be with your hockey team, your book club, any of your friends and neighbors in your community that want to come together and learn how and what your community can look like in a few decades. I will be a part of that meeting where we'll walk you through some of the visioning of how this can work in your community. And then basically you get, at the end of it, anyone who wants to can start organizing for climate action in your community at a local level. And we have a series of campaigns in a box, almost, that you can use to make it easy for you if you haven't done sort of activism before. So we've done a lot of the strategic thinking around, the spectrum of allies, which decision makers to target, who to bring on board, and these things are, very specific, practical ways that you can make your community slowly transition to being post-carbon, whether it's advocating for a car-free street in your community, a specific green housing project, or a compost program. So when you take all these campaigns in the box, we will be working with you to be able to contact your local, provincial, federal ministers, sit them down, give them briefings, and you'll have that whole movement of people who've taken action in your community behind you. So we're really excited to launch it. We're also launching it in French. The translation's taken a little longer, but we really wanted to make sure that our Québécois friends were included in this effort, because every community across Canada needs to be a part of this. And yeah, we're just so excited to launch. So if you want to get in on this and start organizing in your community and pushing for climate action, you can look at signing the petition for post-carbon communities, which I believe we will leave in the comments here. And if you're able, you know, this is sort of a labor of love, and we didn't get a grant to do this. We rely on your support to do this kind of work. It allows us to be, you know, nimble in that grassroots group that can take some of the big ideas that are coming from this country and really try and put them into action on the ground. And so, you know, if you're able to do it, I know it's a tough time for everybody, but if you could help us out with the donation, we really appreciate your support. We're gonna leave a little donate link in the comments here, and we'll be excited to get going. So we're ready, I think, for a bit of question and answer from folks. I haven't seen a whole lot of questions in the comments yet, so please, you know, ask any questions. We're really, I'm excited to talk about this. So let me know what you think. Any questions or feedback? See a question here from Sue. Do you see the local and provincial and federal governments supporting this plan? You know, I do. I think really what we've seen in Canada is that climate action has mostly come at a local level. And, you know, cities like Vancouver, like Halifax, you know, even smaller areas like Nelson and other communities have really taken the lead in being able to transition their community. And there's a lot of power there at a municipal level. And so once that local activism is engaged, that filters up to the provincial and federal level. And I know I was, you know, talking to some folks from the Climate Caucus the other day, which is a group of local politicians across the country, elected leaders who are working for climate change in their communities. We're going to try and figure out how we can work together to be able to advance this. And, you know, once you have city councilors knocking down the doors of provincial and federal governments, you know, they're a lot more inclined to listen, because those are people who are directly providing the services that people rely on. It's a great question here. Hi, Peter. Any collab with Transition Towns Village Vancouver? Is this a similar vision? Yeah, I think you know, the Transition Town movement has been around for a while and is doing a lot of the same work. And the Postcarbon Communities petition is really meant to support that work and add to it when we can. And so, you know, all of the language around it of contacting is written in the same way, so that other groups who are already pushing for these things can move it forward. And when you do get to the point of being able to organize, you know, the first step in any sort of little campaign is to figure out who your allies are and what work is being done already. So we're hoping this will sort of engage a whole movement of activists across the country who are new to pushing for climate action and be able to support the existing stuff that's going on, but also, you know, have some really concrete asks that people can unite around. It's a great question, Michael. Any other questions coming through? A reminder for anybody who's tuning in on our Ontario or Manitoba pages, I'm actually not able to see your questions until unless you put them on the main stream on the Wilderness Committee. So if you are anxious to ask something, just make your way over to the main Wilderness Committee page. Sorry about that. The technology just doesn't quite make it possible to do that. And speaking of technology, I'm very proud that we've managed to get a Zoom feed into a pre-scheduled Facebook Live. If you're also proud about that, throw us a like or love and let us know in the comments. Are you going to explicitly, here's a great question from Eric Doherty, are you going to explicitly oppose urban highway and airport expansion and support shifting funding to public transit, walking, and cycling as part of this project? I'm thinking canceling the $2.5 billion Massey Tunnel expansion could fund a lot of bus and bike lanes and electric buses, etc. Absolutely. You know, the Wilderness Committee has been fighting urban highway expansion for decades now. And this is an especially important question in terms of the moment right now where the governments are providing stimulus to kind of kickstart the economy in a post-pandemic recovery. You know, we can't spend that money on urban highways, on more airports, on anything that actually makes the problem worse. You know, the government's struggling so much to figure out a climate test for their, you know, for new projects. And really, if it makes the problem worse, if it generates more pollution, we shouldn't be building it. And so you'd actually be better off just kind of throwing that money down the drain. But the good news is there's lots of good things we can do that create lots of jobs in communities and actually help us transition and eliminate carbon pollution. So yes, we absolutely will be opposing urban highway and airport expansion as we have in the past. And I think I'm not seeing any more questions come through here, so I think that's it for me today. But thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to get involved with the Postcarbon Communities movement. You can sign the petition, and don't be intimidated that it's a whole process. You're still doing good work if you can sign the petition, get on a fill out a couple tools and really start making noise in your community, because all that work will support the other activists in your community that are a little further along in the process. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to being out there with you and making this change happen.